Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the basically how you can identify if you've got a chainsaw and you're wanting to replace the chain, need to replace the chain, how you can go about finding out what the correct chain is for your saw. So I'm going to be showing you on my Husqvarna 562 XP, currently equipped with an 18-inch bar. But I'm just going to use this as sort of demonstration. Obviously, this is going to change in comparison to, or potentially change in comparison to what you need for your saw. But I'm just using this as sort of like a visual reference. So on this particular saw, you can just sort of see there's a couple of markings on the bar there. So what they are, let me just move that around. So what they are, I don't know how clearly you'll be able to see them, but this one here is it reads 5/8. That particular one there is the depth, or sorry, the gauge of the bar. So your gauge refers to the distance between the two rails on the bar, and it's the gap in between. So if you sort of look at that bar, it's that gap right in the middle. So on this particular bar, the gap that runs along the middle of the bar is 5/8 or 1.5 millimeters. That's a very important measurement, because if you get a chain that's not wide enough, or the drive links aren't quite wide enough, obviously you're going to get a lot of flop and a lot of movement as the chain's rotating around the bar, which is going to cause excessive wear. If you get one that's too big, obviously it's not going to fit. So you need to make sure that that one is one that you get. The other fundamental is this one here, which camera's not really focusing, but on this one again, that reads 3/8. Now 3/8 is referring to the size of, well, sorry, not the size, it's the pitch of the chain. So again, that's another important one that needs to be remembered, because you need to get the correct pitch on the links, the drive links. You need to get the correct gauge on the drive links. The other one is overall length. Now obviously, again, chain's got to be the correct length. It's too long, it won't fit. It's too short, it won't fit. So on the bar, you've got this one right at the end here, and again, I know you can't see it that well, but it says 18 inches or 45 centimeters. And also underneath, sort of going back a little bit, underneath where it says 3/8, there's a number with 2 letters on the end, and it is 68DL. 68DL is referring basically to 68 drive links. So the chain itself has 68 drive links. So if you've got your bar and you can read the information that's on the bar, it's fairly easy to get a chain that matches and that is the correct size. But obviously, the nature of chainsaws, you're constantly cutting things with it. As you all know, the paint and stuff like that fades on the bar, so it can make it very difficult to read. But also there's some bars out there that don't have sort of that information written on them. I'll show you one here. So here we have one of my Canon bars, and literally all it says on here, it gives you your gauge. So it's got 5/8, but it doesn't give you a pitch reference or anything like that. You've literally just got the bar name, Canon, where it was made, and then the rest of the information on there is literally all relevant. You know, it's product codes and item codes and stuff. So it doesn't actually identify what chain you would need. So then that's where you then need to turn to the chain itself to read the information that's given to you on the chain to be able to match it up with the new one. I've got another bar here that's pretty worn. You can just about make out, you know, what it says. Again, you've got 3/8, 063, then you've got 72 there, which is 72 drive links with a 3/8 pitch and an 063 gauge. Now, if the information is not available on the bar, like I say, we need to turn to the chain, because it's very important that you get those three measurements correct. Obviously, the length one speaks for itself, the gauge one kind of speaks for itself, but the pitch is somewhere that you can often make a mistake, because you may get the gauge correct, you may get the length correct, but if the pitch is wrong, in theory the chain will still fit the saw, but you can cause excessive damage to the drive sprocket, the bar, because obviously your drive sprocket is set and is made to fit a certain pitch of chain. Vice versa, the same on the bar. You know, if a bar is designed to take, you know, a 3/8 pitch, and you know you go and pop on it a 325, it's not one, it probably won't work correctly, but you're also going to cause excessive damage to the sprockets, because the bar's got a sprocket. Obviously you've got your nose sprocket on the end, and you've got your drive sprocket which sits behind the clutch cover. So I've got a couple of sprockets here that I'll sort of show you, give you a bit of a visual reference. So what we have here, these aren't for the Husqvarna, but it doesn't really matter. This one is actually, I'll show you this one first. Hopefully the camera will focus on it. Again, not really, but right at the very top here, right, if you'll be able to just make it out, that says 3/8. So that is the pitch for this drive sprocket. Now again, if you put a different size chain on it, so this one is incorrect for the sprocket in every which way, but just as a reference and to sort of show you, the chain in theory still fits in the sprocket, but when you're using it, you're going to get a lot of excessive wear on the sprocket itself. So just because the chain fits doesn't necessarily mean that it's the correct one. So that's what you need to double check. And I'll show you on these two little items here. So these are sprocket off of a little still. So you've got one that's a pico or pico chain, which is this one, and then you've got this one here, which is in 325 pitch. You can just sort of see how they're different. You know, this one it's got a much more refined taper, and then they're not as thick as the lugs on this one. So again, this particular chain is correct for the pico, and you can see there that it fits really nicely on the sprocket. So you're going to have minimal movement, and obviously it's going to be it's just going to increase the lifespan of the sprocket. But here we have the 325, which is incorrect for this chain. But again, in theory, it still goes round the sprocket, but you can see you've got a lot more gap, you know, air gaps and stuff between the drive links and the actual sprocket. So again, if you're not used to using saws, and sometimes, to be fair, especially on the Husqvarnas that have got an inbound sprocket, those kind of things can be actually very difficult to see. You can't necessarily on the inbound sprockets see when the chain is on. So yeah, you can't necessarily see on an inbound sprocket when the chain is on. So it'd be quite easy to sort of overlook that. But that's why it's very important to get that correct pitch, because without the pitch being correct, the chain may still fit, but you're going to do a lot of damage to the saw, and it's just going to chew everything up. So the pitch is really important. Now, going back to what we were saying earlier, in the sense that if your bar does not have the information available on it, how can you identify what size chain you have fitted currently? So we're going to run through the numbers that sort of can be found on the chain to be able to identify its pitch and gauge. Now, it's going to be very difficult for me to show you because the numbers are so small, but I'm definitely going to do my best to try and show you what we have. Now, again, this is just for reference, and it may not be factually correct your end. So what I would always suggest is there's plenty available online, because certain manufacturers will use certain numbers and identifiers on the chains. But for representation, I'm going to be using a steel chain. Now, on the drive links, to identify the pitch, if you look very closely, you're not going to be able to see that at all, but right in this corner there's a tiny little number, and on this particular one it's number 3. Now, for steel, number 3 marked on the drive link is for a pitch of 050. So again, this is the Pico chain, so that number 3 is for 050. Now, on the, let's have a look, on the depth gauge, again, I'm not going to be able to see it because it is absolutely tiny, but right in this very top corner, just in front of where my finger is, there's another number. On this particular chain, it's the number 6. So for a number 6 chain, that is the equivalent, or means that it's a 3/8. But not only is it a 3/8, it's a 3/8 low profile chain. Again, this is specific to steel. It's a steel chain. Each manufacturer does have sort of their own sort of identifying system, which makes it very difficult and very complicated, especially for new users. Drive links, some of the chains will be marked, again, dependent on the length, you know, blah, blah, blah. The only other way that you can find out exactly how many drive links the chain has is to physically run along and actually count each individual drive link. A little bit laborious. Short chains is not too bad, but it's a surefire way to be able to, you know, accurately identify how many drive links the chain has. So once you know those 3 things, you then have the 3 most important, and really the only 3 pieces of information that are vital at getting correct. You've got the pitch, you've got the gauge, and you've got your length. There's a whole host of other things that can kind of be contributing factors, but none of them will affect whether or not that chain fits your saw. If you get those three pieces of information, the chain 100% will fit your saw, and it will be the correct one for your saw. But there are different varieties of chain, if that makes sense. You know, in the tooth type, you've got full chisel, semi chisel, full chisel, semi chisel. Crikey, what's that with me? You've got chamfered chisel. There's loads of different varieties on that. You've got skip tooth. You've got full house chains. A whole host. Obviously, if you're just going to be using it, you know, as, excuse my dog, he's just having a good sniff down in the corner. It's all right, he's leaving now. Yeah, dependent on the top, sort of the application that you're using the saw for, is obviously going to depend on what kind of chain you specifically need. But as long as you get one, you know, that fits, as long as you get one that matches your saw on those three pieces of information, your pitch, your gauge, your length, it doesn't really matter about the tooth type. It doesn't really matter whether or not, you know, it's a full house chain, skip tooth, you know, the chisel type. It really doesn't matter. To be fair, most commonly it's probably semi chisel. You know, if you just was to order one online, it's probably going to be a semi chisel, especially on smaller saws. Obviously, if you're looking at larger saws, and you know it's going to be more like a milling saw or something like that, you're going to want to get one that's sort of better for that application, you know, a rip tooth chain or something like that. So yeah, as conclusion, they are the three fundamentals that you need to know. You can use the bar that's fitted to the saw to read the information on there if it's available, if it's visible. Obviously, if it's not, you can look at the chain. The information is there on the chain, but you just need to make sure that exactly it correlates with, like I say, Husqvarna steel. They've all sort of got their own number system. So if it's a steel chain, make sure that you're getting, or you look it up. There's, fortunately, the power of the internet, there's plenty of things available on Google. There is actually a fantastic website, which I'll link in the description below, and it's absolutely fantastic for basically anything chainsaw related. It's got a brilliant article on there about chainsaw chains, for, you know, tensioning and identifying chains, what the difference is. Goes through absolutely everything there is to need to know about a chainsaw chain. So I'll link that in the description below. Pop over and check that out, because it really is worth the read, especially if you're, you know, new to it, want to learn a little bit more information. But yeah, other than that, I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you on the next one.